I got paid $1,000 to watch a man sleep, then he spoke without waking up. I needed money. Not the kind of a little short on rent, broke, no, I was hanging by a frayed thread over the abyss. My car had died 2 counties away from anything familiar, its final sputtering breath coinciding with the maxing out of my last credit card. I spent the final $50 in my checking account getting it towed, and that left me in a borrowed hoodie, eating peanut butter straight from the jar, scraping expired ramen noodles from the back of my cupboard. My roommate Kara tolerated me the way someone tolerates a broken dishwasher, annoyed, inconvenienced, but not yet angry enough to kick me out. Still, I could see it coming. Her kindness had an expiration date, and it was rapidly approaching. That was when I saw the listing. Night watcher needed. $1,000 per night. Must stay awake. Must not interfere. Must not speak to the subject. Security cameras will be monitoring compliance. I refreshed the page 3 times. Checked the date. Rubbed my eyes. It had been posted 12 minutes ago on a local job board that usually advertised dog walkers, temporary barista shifts, and college essay editors. It stuck out like a bloodstain on white carpet. No contact number. Just an email address and a name. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds, then laughed. It had to be a prank. Some performance art thing. Or worse, a setup for some kind of trafficking ring. But I was too broke to be cautious. I clicked apply. The man who responded called himself Mr. Ayers. He emailed me back within the hour, inviting me to meet him at a coffee shop just outside the city in the kind of neighborhood where espresso costs more than my groceries for the week. He was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table. You couldn't miss him. A pale, skeletal man in a 3-piece charcoal suit, sitting ramrod straight in 90-degree heat, reading from a tiny leather-bound book. He looked like a lawyer from the 19th century or someone who wandered out of an old painting and never adjusted to modern times. He stood as I approached. "You must be Evan," he said, voice cultured and crisp. "Please, sit." I didn't sit. Not at first. "I'm sorry, this job, is it real?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Like, actually $1,000? Per night?" He folded his hands and nodded once. "Correct." I looked around the cafe. Normal people sipping iced coffee, scrolling through phones. No one seemed to notice how out of place he was. Or maybe no one dared. "What's the catch?" "You'll be watching my father." He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Then he added, more slowly, "He is unwell. But he is harmless. Mostly." I frowned. "Mostly?" Ayers gave me a thin smile. "You will understand. The job requires only vigilance. No contact. No conversation. Stay in the room from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Do not fall asleep. Do not speak to him. You will be observed via security camera to ensure compliance. And if I speak to him?" The smile disappeared. "Then the arrangement ends." Immediately. That night, a black car picked me up from outside my apartment. No driver in sight when it pulled up, the windows were tinted, the interior smelled like old books and fresh leather. The ride was long. Too long. After 20 minutes, the city vanished into darkness. After 40, I was sure we were well outside county lines. Eventually, we turned down a narrow road lined with towering trees. No streetlights, no signs, just gravel crunching under tires and the whisper of wind through leaves. Then we arrived. The house, no mansion, looked like something ripped from a gothic horror novel. 3 stories tall, ivy-clad, and surrounded by wrought iron fencing. The driveway was long and winding, guarded by a set of gates that moaned open like they hadn't been oiled since the Great Depression. The car came to a stop in front of massive double doors. Mr. Ayers stood waiting under the porch light. Still in that suit. Still pale. Still impossibly still. "This way," he said, and I followed him inside. The interior was even more surreal. Oil paintings lined the walls, portraits of solemn men and grim women in heavy robes, their eyes following me as I passed. There were statues in the hallways. Tall ones. All human figures, some missing arms or heads. Dust coated everything except the floor, which was immaculate. We walked in silence. Our footsteps echoed. The air smelled of aged wood and something faintly metallic, like blood and iron. Finally, Ayers stopped before a set of double doors on the 2nd floor. He turned the knob and stepped aside. Inside was a bedroom the size of my entire apartment. Thick curtains had been drawn tight over the windows. A single lamp burned dimly in the far corner. And in the center of it all, in a massive canopy bed, lay a man. He didn't move. Not when we entered. Not when Ayers called him father. Not when I stepped closer to get a better look. He looked dead. Paper-thin skin drawn tight over brittle bones. Lips pale. Eyes closed. hands folded neatly across his chest like he was waiting to be buried. A heart monitor beeped steadily beside the bed, confirming life, but just barely. I looked at Ayers. So I just watch him sleep? He nodded. Yes, that is all. And you're paying me $1,000 to do that? A pause. The amount is justified by the unique circumstances. That made me uncomfortable. What kind of circumstances? Ayers met my gaze. His eyes were like glass, no warmth, no life behind them. Do not speak to him, he said. Do not touch him. No matter what he says, you must not respond. I blinked. Wait, what he says? I thought he's asleep. Ayers didn't blink. You'll understand soon. Then, without another word, he stepped outside, closed the door, and I heard the click of the lock. At first, it wasn't so bad. The room had a soft leather chair in the corner, the kind that practically swallows you whole. There was a small table with a lamp and a thermos of coffee. Strong stuff. Burnt going down, but it did the job. I settled in, eyes flicking between the old man in the bed and the quiet heartbeat monitor beside him. The machine beeped once every few seconds. Steady. Reassuring. I checked my phone, no signal. Of course. For the first hour, I just sat there. Listening. Waiting. Watching. The room was cold, unnaturally so, but I chalked it up to poor insulation in an old house. Or maybe the air conditioning. Who knows? At the 90-minute mark, I started to nod off. Caught myself mid-head dip and shook it off. Took a long swig of coffee and stood up to stretch. The old man hadn't moved an inch. It was around midnight when things began to shift. I was rereading the same paragraph of a book for the third time when I heard it, a sound like someone clearing their throat. I looked up. The man in the bed was still. But something was different. The monitor was still beeping. Slow. Steady. But I could swear. Then his lips moved. I froze. I leaned forward. He spoke again, a whisper, raspy and dry. Is someone there? I didn't answer. My heart started to pound. He was asleep, I told myself. Talking in his sleep. People did that all the time. But then his eyelids fluttered. Just a flicker. Not open, but moving. Please, he whispered. Help me. I gripped the arms of the chair. Don't respond. I heard Ayers' voice in my head, clear as if he were standing right beside me. Please, the old man said again. They buried me. They buried me alive. I can't move. I can't breathe. My stomach turned. I opened my mouth, then shut it. The monitor beeped on, unchanging. I can hear you, he whispered. Please. Speak to me. Just speak. I'm so cold. I stood up. Took a step forward, then remembered the cameras. I looked up. In the far corner, a small black lens watched me unblinking. I was being watched. Judged. The man in the bed shifted barely, but enough. His hand twitched. His head lolled slightly to one side. His eyes were still closed. Don't listen to him, another voice said, but it came from behind me. I spun around. Nothing there. Nothing but oil paintings and heavy furniture and shadows that suddenly felt much too deep. I turned back. The old man was silent now. Still as stone. I didn't sleep that night. At 6 a.m. sharp, the door clicked open. Mr. Ayers stepped in, looking as composed as ever. You lasted the night, he said, almost impressed. Good. I stared at him. He talked. Ayers tilted his head. Did you speak back? No. He smiled faintly. Then all is well. He handed me a white envelope. I opened it. Cash. Crisp. Neatly stacked. No traceable bills. You'll return tonight? I nodded. Of course I would. I needed the money. And I needed to understand what the hell was going on. The old man didn't move for hours. Not a twitch. Not a breath I could see. Just the faint, mechanical beeping of the heart monitor, pulsing steadily in the dark like a ticking clock counting down to something I couldn't name. I sat there in that massive antique chair, listening to the silence stretch. Time doesn't behave normally in a place like that. It folds in on itself, slows down, forgets how to pass. I checked my phone constantly, even though I knew there was no signal. I had a watch, but the longer I stared at it, the more I became convinced it was lying. The room was cold, and the cold got into you, not just your skin, but your mind. A deep, old chill, like the air had been refrigerated by history. Like you were breathing something that had been trapped for decades. The curtains never moved. The shadows didn't shift. The lamp in the corner gave off just enough light to remind you how dark everything else was. Midnight came and went without incident. I was starting to nod off. My body was trying to rebel. Lulled by the stillness, the muffled heartbeat, the rhythm of my own shallow breathing. My chin dipped. I jerked back up, rubbed my eyes. My coffee was gone. I didn't even remember finishing it. Then I heard it. A whisper. Help! It wasn't loud. If anything, it sounded far away, like someone calling from the other end of a long hallway. I froze. I turned toward the bed. The old man was still lying there, exactly as he had been for hours. Pale, hands folded, eyes closed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then I heard it again. Please help me. I stood up. The voice was unmistakably his, hoarse, dry, like someone whose throat hadn't known water in years. But his lips weren't moving. I was sure of it. I leaned closer, heart pounding. His face was still. No sign of life. Just the steady beep of the monitor. Not supposed to be here. It wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a presence. Like the voice was inside my head. Not in the room. Not through my ears. Deeper than that. A dream you have before you fall asleep. A memory that doesn't belong to you. I backed up slowly until my legs hit the edge of the chair. I sat down, eyes fixed on the man in the bed. Everything in me wanted to speak, to ask what he meant, to make sure I wasn't losing it. But I remembered Ayers. Do not speak to him, no matter what he says. My mouth was dry, my body buzzed with adrenaline, and still, I didn't speak. The whispering faded, eventually, or maybe I just stopped hearing it. I stared at the old man for the rest of the night. He never moved again, never made a sound. The heart monitor kept beeping. That became the only thing I trusted in the room. Ayers returned in the morning, exactly at 6. The door unlocked with a soft click, and he stepped inside like he just walked in from a casual morning stroll. Same suit, same blank expression. He glanced at the monitor, then at me. You made it through the night. I looked at him for a long time. He spoke, I said finally. Ayers tilted his head slightly, the way a bird might. Not surprised. Not exactly pleased either. Did you respond? No, I said. He nodded. Good. He reached into his coat and produced a white envelope, thick with cash. Crisp bills, perfectly stacked. I took it. He was already halfway to the door when he paused. Will you be returning tonight? I hesitated. The rational part of me screamed no. This was off the rails weird. Possibly dangerous. Definitely not normal. But then I thought of my empty fridge, my overdrawn account, my landlord's warnings, and the envelope in my hand, still warm. Yeah, I said. I'll be back. He smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from him. And then he was gone. I don't know what I expected to be different the second night. Maybe that the room would feel less oppressive. Maybe that I'd find a rational explanation, sleep paralysis, psychosis, or some kind of elaborate trick with hidden speakers and subsonic frequencies. I told myself anything I could to keep from accepting the truth. That the old man had whispered into my head without opening his mouth, without making a sound. But when I walked through the door that second night, 10 p.m., on the dot, it all came rushing back. Same room, same stillness, same breathless, embalmed air. Mr. Ayers said nothing this time, just nodded as I entered, handed me another thermos of that strong, bitter coffee, and locked the door behind me. I sat in the chair again, feeling its leather arms wrap around me like cold hands. I stared at the bed. Same man, same position, same faint beep of the heart monitor. The silence stretched. By midnight, I'd begun to convince myself I'd imagined everything from the first night. Sleep deprivation, stress, malnutrition, hell, maybe even a little peanut butter mold hallucination. I nearly convinced myself the whispering had been nothing but a bad dream. Then it started again. The voice came back, louder this time, not in volume but in presence, like it took up more space in my mind. They trapped me. It hissed through my skull like steam from a cracked pipe. I stood up, turned in a slow circle. The room was empty, of course it was. There was no one here but me, the body in the bed, and the unseen eye of the security camera mounted in the corner. Not my body. The words were wrong in how they felt more than how they sounded. Too dense, heavy like iron on the tongue, like they weren't just being heard, but pressed into me. I backed away from the bed. The whispering stopped for a moment. I thought it was over. Then, at 3:12 a.m. sharp, it happened. His eyes snapped open. It wasn't a gentle stirring or a slow awakening. It was like a puppet strings had been yanked taut. One moment they were shut. The next they were wide and staring, unblinking, bloodshot, aware. I didn't breathe. The room didn't change, but everything felt different. The air went dense, charged like before a lightning strike. My ears rang. His head turned. Slowly, too slowly. The kind of movement that makes your stomach turn because you know that no joint should bend that fluidly. His neck cracked with each degree, vertebrae grinding like old stone. He turned toward me and stopped. His body didn't move, only his head and those eyes. "You can see me, can't you?" It wasn't a question. Not really. It was a confirmation. The voice wasn't coming from his mouth. Still closed, still pale, but the words stabbed into my thoughts like needles. I wanted to look away, couldn't. The monitor beeped steadily beside him. No change, no panic, no stress. They think I'm sleeping. My throat dried instantly. I wanted to run, to scream, to call for heirs, for anyone. But I knew what would happen if I spoke. I remembered the warning, do not speak to him. So I sat there motionless, praying the voice would stop. But it didn't. He started screaming, not with his voice, with his mind. His mouth opened wide, wider than humanly possible, but no sound came out. It was all in my head, a howl of pure terror, of madness, of centuries-old grief. "Get me out!" I staggered to my feet, knocking over the chair. My knees went weak. The room spun. His eyes bulged, locked onto mine, and I felt the scream in my bones. The monitor didn't change. Still that calm, soft beep, as if he were dreaming peacefully. Then his body jerked violently. One convulsion, spinal, bone deep, and just like that, silence. His eyes shut, his mouth relaxed, his breathing evened out. The monitor kept beeping, like nothing had happened. I didn't sit down again. I stood in the corner for the next 3 hours, refusing to blink for more than a second. My mind felt hollowed out. My limbs vibrated like tuning forks. I kept glancing at the door like it might open early. Didn't. At 6 a.m. sharp, the door unlocked. Mr. Ayres stepped in, same as always. Composed, clean, empty. "You stayed," he said simply. I looked at him, jaw clenched. He opened his eyes. Ayres looked at the old man, lying still beneath the covers. "Yes, that sometimes happens." He screamed. I said. Ayres paused, just for a beat. "And did you speak?" "No." He gave that same faint smile as before, like I'd passed a test, like everything was unfolding just the way he wanted. He handed me another envelope. I opened it. More cash. More than before, actually. I didn't bother counting, but I felt the difference. He was rewarding me. "You did well," he said, already turning to leave. "Same time tomorrow?" I should have said no. I wanted to say no, but I couldn't. 2 nights had wiped out a third of my debt. 2 more, and I'd be free of everything. The creditors, the bills, the looming eviction, the daily dread that had ruled my life for over a year. I could breathe again. I was scared out of my mind, but I was hooked. "Yeah," I said. "I'll be back." I brought 2 things with me the 3rd night. A cheap spiral notebook and a crucifix I'd found at a thrift store. I'm not religious, not even a little, but when you've watched a corpse speak through your thoughts, scream without sound, and look directly into your soul, symbolism starts to feel less optional. The notebook was for sanity. The crucifix was for hope. Neither worked. The moment I stepped back into the room, something felt off. Not louder, not colder, just wrong. The walls felt tighter, the shadows longer. The heart monitor's beeping was still steady, but now it sounded muffled, like it was coming from underwater. I sat down again, this time with the notebook open on my lap. I didn't write anything at first, just held the pen and stared at the bed, waiting for the nightmare to begin. The whispers didn't make me wait long. They came sooner this time. By 11:23 p.m., they'd already started. "He'll take your face." It slithered through my skull, oily and low. "Don't let him feed." I gripped the pen until my knuckles turned white. The old man didn't move yet, but the air was charged. Something was coming. At 2:47 a.m., the temperature dropped like a stone. I saw my breath, not just a mist, but full clouds of fog with every exhale. I shivered violently. My teeth chattered. My fingers numbed around the pen. The heart monitor didn't react. Then, with no warning, the old man sat up. There was no transition. One frame, he was flat. The next, upright, rigid, fluid, impossible. It was like watching a VHS tape skip through time. His back was straight, arms loose at his sides, his head tilted just slightly, and his face, God, his face, it was blank, not peaceful, not sleeping, blank like a mask, like someone was wearing it. He turned his head toward me and smiled, not a warm smile, not even a cruel one, a knowing smile, like a butcher seeing a familiar cut of meat. "You've lasted longer than the others," he said. The voice didn't match the body. Gone was the frail rasp from night one. Gone was the ghostly whisper from night two. This was deep, smooth, resonant, predatory. "You think I'm the prisoner?" he said, rising from the bed with the slow grace of something that doesn't need to rush. "That I'm the victim?" I couldn't move. I wanted to. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, to scream, to do anything. But I was frozen, locked in place by the sheer wrongness of what I was seeing. He stood fully now, bare feet on the old wooden floor, hospital gown hanging off him like tattered parchment. He looked fragile, still the old man, still all brittle skin and bones, but when he walked, the air seemed to ripple around him. The heart monitor kept beeping. Beep, 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 steady, calm, lying. "I wore your predecessors like gloves," he said, taking a step toward me. One screamed so loudly it rattled the windows. One begged until he bit off his own tongue. Another step. I backed up, barely able to breathe. "But you," he said, tilting his head again. "You're different. You resist. You anchor. I like that." He reached for me, and that broke the spell. I bolted. I don't remember screaming, but my throat was raw afterward. I sprinted to the door, slamming into it so hard I saw stars. I pounded on it with both fists, shouting for heirs, for God, for anyone. The thing in the room laughed. Not with sound, but inside me. A bubbling, joyous sound like boiling tar. The door finally unlocked. I didn't wait. Ayers barely had it cracked open before I barreled through, knocking his shoulder aside as I sprinted into the hallway, down the stairs, out the front door. I didn't stop when I hit the driveway. I didn't stop at the gates. I didn't stop until I collapsed in a ditch half a mile away. I didn't take the envelope. Didn't care. Couldn't care. I got home at dawn. I didn't shower. Didn't eat. I just locked every door, every window, and sat on the floor with my back to the wall, shaking. It's been 5 nights since then. I haven't slept. Not really. I doze off for seconds at a time, then wake up gasping. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. Not the old man's, the thing beneath it. The mask slipping, the eyes inside, deep and ancient and starving. It knows me now. It whispers even when I'm awake. Not words, not always, just presence. Just that same sick, slick awareness sliding through the back of my skull. I unplugged the TV, threw out my phone. Didn't matter. This morning I got a letter. No return address. Just my name written in that same perfect, looping cursive that Ayers used on his business card. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One final night, $10,000. If you don't come back, he will. I dropped it, let it sit on the floor like a live snake. I tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. Like something had taken over the muscles in my face and didn't know how they worked. I went to check my bank account. Overdrawn. Again, of course. And then my phone rang. The one I threw away. I never heard it hit the floor. Never saw it reappear. But it was sitting on my desk again. Screen cracked, buzzing softly. Caller ID just said, unknown. I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because I heard him, laughing, through the phone. Not outside it, not in the room, but through the thin, cracking speaker. A long, wet laugh, like something enjoying a meal it hadn't earned. So now I'm here, typing this, hoping someone out there has an answer, a sigil, a ritual, a therapist who won't call the cops. Anything, because I think this is it. Tonight is the choice. If I go back, I'm feeding him. If I don't, he's coming anyway. So, Reddit, what the hell do I do? Because that laugh hasn't stopped. And I think he's learning how to use my voice.